Howdy everybody, I pray this video finds you blessed. This week Doug and I from Pohl Productions decided to dye some shavings and see what we can both come up with with resin. So here I have Ultra Dye, FolkArt Ultra Dye. It's a wood dye, cloth dye. You can buy it at Michael's. I'll put the link in the description below as far as exactly where to get it from. It comes in several different colors. I chose to do the cooler colors and Doug chose to do warmer colors, or I suggested for him to do the warmer colors. I thought it'd be a great contrast between our projects and you know, just to kind of experiment with the color families and stuff. So right now I just pulled out four of my favorite cool colors, kind of ocean themed cool colors, and mixed with denatured alcohol. Now I didn't do a measurement, so I couldn't tell you like what ratio to what. I just probably put approximately a tablespoon of color and maybe a cup or so of denatured alcohol, just enough to where I could saturate and move the shavings around in the bucket and make sure they get good and coated. I've done this before and I have saved the leftover denatured alcohol and dye. So as long as you have a jar that you can seal up really well, it will be just fine. Matter of fact, that's how I got my blue colored, because I had leftover color, and so I just went ahead and reused it again. So I decided to go ahead and mix the all four colors together to create a fifth color. Because I didn't want to waste that, and being that there were shavings and everything, and I don't want to bring out my strainer and strain all that out just to save it in a jar. I figured just use this opportunity to use up the rest of my shavings and the rest of my coloring. I added a little bit of green because it seemed a little denim-y, a little denim blue, and that wasn't kind of the color I was going for. I didn't have a proper waste block, one that I felt that would be completely dry anyway to use for this project. So I just went ahead and bought a bunch of plastic cups from the Dollar Tree, and I hot glued them to a stick so that way it would hold it down in there and anchor it in there, so when I filled up with resin it wouldn't float away or move. People ask me about the paddles that I use for mixing. They're actually just paint mixing paddles that you can get at Walmart. Walmart.com sells them. But be careful because it does incorporate air into your resin versus stirring by hand. So if you're going to use that stir, that paint stir, make sure you're going to use a pressure pot for your resin to help force out any air bubbles, because it does create a lot of air in your resin. I did a total of 8 pours, which is quite a bit. And I did 500 grams, 512 grams at a time. That's A and part B, part A and part B, excuse me. Now, it did set a lot faster than what thick set is supposed to set, because it was, you know, I did pour quite a bit at once, and also it was very, very hot in my shop. I think that weekend we had temperatures around 101, 102. So just be mindful of that. Your temperature you are working with resin in is going to make a difference on how your resin sets. If it's not controlled, my shop's not controlled, it temperature changes with the outside, and that weekend it was just extremely hot, so it set a lot faster. I'm using some pieces of maple that I had for the top and bottom of this piece. I'm just sanding 80 grit to help give the resin something to kind of grip onto when I adhere these two pieces together. Right now I'm working on the bottom portion. The top portion is going to be the same size disc, and I'm going to do the same process. And I'm using the fast set resin because I wanted to be able to flip it over and glue it together the same day, and it sets up within a couple of hours, and so that worked out perfect. I know I've mentioned in my other videos where I've having issues using my Irish grind gouge, my bowl gouge on resin, because the nose of it was too pointy. It just kept digging into the resin and causing it to shatter. So if you're having that issue, it could be because of the type of grind that is on your gouge. I don't know the exact perfect secret, but I know for me, that Sorby, that 3/4 inch Sorby worked so much better because the flute was larger, so therefore it kind of acted as like a scraper instead of a cutter. I don't know how to really explain it. And even just then I was trying to use my Irish grind gouge, even though I know better, and right here it just catches a spot of that resin and just chips it out, just blows it out. So that was like, okay, Kim, stop picking up. My Irish grind is my favorite tool, so that's why it's always my go-to, and it's really hard to let it sit there all lonely on the shelf while I cut resin. But the one tool that never fails me when it comes to cutting resin is my round nose scraper. I turned it into a negative rake, and before in a couple of my past videos I've posted in the description a video of Mike Walt and how he shows you how to turn your scrapers into negative rake scrapers, and I'll post that video in the description below again. Now I kind of have an idea of how I want to shape it, kind of an idea. So I'm really just kind of taking some off the top, taking some off the bottom, and just seeing how the balance and how it feels and how it looks as I go. So there really is no rhyme or reason. I did have a book of pottery shapes that I was trying to use for this piece. It ended up not being exactly the same shape as what I originally intended, just because of the size difference and what I was looking at compared to what amount of material I had. So as far as shaping goes, I'm not really set to one particular shape. I'm kind of just starting with a sort of an idea and just moving material around until I get something that I feel looks about right, I guess. When I started this project, I had no idea what I was going to use for a finish. I kind of just figured, well, wait until I get to that point and then I'll decide. Unfortunately, because of all the little shavings, they held on to little air pockets, and being my shop was so warm, the resin set a little faster than what it normally would. So there's tons of little holes from air pockets. So I decided at that point, once I seen all those air pockets, that I knew I was just going to have to do a resin finish. It would help fill the holes and finish it all at once versus trying to do several steps to eliminate holes. I got to use my Yoder hollowing tool for this project. And a little tip, and Billy Burt from Billy Burt's Messy Studio, he shared with me a tip, is to take the bar and just slightly turn it to where the nose of the tip is slightly down. And that helps to kind of cut back on any kind of chip out you get when you are turning resin. So that's what I did. My nose of my cutter tip is slightly tilted downward just a little bit, not too much below center, and that helped keep from that shattering going on while I was turning the inside of this. So thank you so very much, Billy, for that tip. It really helped out with this project. So I sanded from 80 to about 400 grit, mostly concerned about the 400 grit on the wood portion, not so much the resin, because I want that resin to have something for the resin I'm going to use for coating it to stick to. I normally don't like to use these sponge brushes when I'm applying resin for a finish, because it does create more bubbles. Maybe I'm not doing it right. The sponge just really gets bubbly, and I can go over it with a torch, and that was fine. It was popping the bubbles, but the sponge brush I just don't normally use. I ran out of regular brushes and didn't get to the store to get any. So just to warn you, it's just real foamy. It makes the resin kind of foamy. So I didn't like it. I didn't like how it was going on with the sponge brush, and I felt it was a little harder to get, I don't know, for me to get it spread around evenly. So I'm sanding the first coat with 320 grit to level everything out and give something for the second coat to kind of stick to. Clean it off really good with denatured alcohol, and I let the lathe run with the resin on it at 50 RPMs for about, I set my timer for about an hour, went out and turned off the lathe. It was tacky and set up enough to where it wasn't dripping, so I didn't have to keep it spinning to keep everything in place. And then covered it with a box and just let it set overnight. The second coat worked perfect. Sometimes I have to do 3 or 4. It all depends on the project. So I guess there's really no guarantee is if you only have to do 2 coats. But anyways, check out Doug's video. I'll put a link in the description below. He created a beautiful piece out of his dyed shavings. So I'll put the link in the description so you can go check it out. I appreciate him for challenging me to this collaboration, and I pray you all enjoyed it. I pray you have a wonderful weekend. Thank you so much for watching. Take care, and God bless.